back in the early 2000s, I used to work at a small video game store that also doubled as a small arcade. We mainly sold vintage video games, classics from the 80s and 90s, but that didn't mean we didn't sell some more recent releases too. It's just our theme was more focused on being vintage. Anyway, in the time working there, I had all sorts of guests. 99% had been wonderful, and I actually gotten to know some of them very well. I would actually show up on my days off from work, and those new friends I met would join me as we played at some of the arcade machines. But those are just normal moments. I want to spend some of my time here to tell you about a situation that occurred one evening when I was working the night shift. Now, our store was located in our city's downtown district, filled with many restaurants, coffee shops, bars, and stores, and while foot traffic was relatively busy, this night was really slow. I think it had to do with the fact it had been raining pretty heavily. Combine that with the wind and nobody wanted to be out. No issue for myself and my coworker Jennifer, since this gave us plenty of time to just sit back, play video games, and listen to the music over the intercom system. About an hour before closing, Jennifer heads into the back room to take her break, which left me all alone in the front, keeping a watchful eye on the store. There were two teenagers playing Street Fighter in the arcade section, having a good time. As I looked down at my computer monitor for a brief moment, I happened to hear someone enter the store. I looked up to greet them, and I got the chills when I'm faced with a person wearing a ski mask, dressed in all black. I try to play it cool, asking him if he was playing some sort of prank, until he starts to walk up to the shelves and starts dumping video games and other expensive products into a fairly large duffel bag. Naturally, I'm growing furious since this guy had no right to just come into the store and start stealing everything. So I walked up to him with a purpose and I told him to stop, and what he does next and says left me completely terrified. He pulls out a gun and points it right up to my temple. My life flashed before my eyes as I feared that was going to be my end. Meanwhile, I can see behind him the two teenagers book it out of the arcade and out of the store. I couldn't blame them, to be honest. "Shut up and go open the cash register, or you're going to get shot," he says in an intimidating voice. Well, what else was I going to do? My life wasn't worth a couple of video games, even though I was angry. I do as he says and make my way to the cash register, while he then throws some more products into his duffel bag. I ended up pressing the silent alarm under the counter that the owner had installed for emergencies to notify the local police department, and I'm so glad I did. Now, little did I know that in these moments, my co-worker Jennifer was in the process of calling the police as well, as she had overheard and peeked from the back room to what was taking place. I don't blame her for not trying to come out and get involved. After all, last thing I wanted was for her to get hurt, and it turned out better anyway. So after he took about $500 from the cash register, he then gets even more greedy and grabs even more games. All this time he was taking was working against his favor because it allowed enough eyewitnesses who were curious to what was happening to look out from the window. Now, even though police hadn't arrived first, I did get some help. You see, it turned out those two teenagers went to get some help. As it so happened, those kids were the sons of a retired Marine who was with his wife next door at one of the restaurants. The teenagers just so happened to have been at our store. Well, that retired Marine, bless his heart, ran over, and no joke, the balls of steel on this guy. He actually chased after the robber, risking getting shot, and he managed to help the police get a description. Thank God that he wasn't hurt, and the police actually managed to catch up with the thief and arrest him. As it turned out, the gun was a fake, and in no way was I, nor that Marine, ever in any sort of danger. That was a relief, but it sure didn't mean I wasn't paranoid and traumatized for months to come. I mean, fake or not, having something like that happen to you really takes you aback, and it makes you appreciate your life that much more. Hey Creepy Fox, been listening to you since 2019. I want to say I'm really proud of you for getting through your total knee replacement recovery and the removal of your giant cell tumor. You've shown with hard work and determination, you can get through it all. I myself am currently going through PT after I was in a car accident 2 months ago. I'm doing way better now. By the way, listening to your videos has helped me relax at night when I'm trying to sleep. I'm currently writing this up on my laptop as I lie here in bed, and I'm hoping you can feature this for an upcoming video. This is an experience of mine I had back in the summer of 2015. I was attending an anime convention in Los Angeles with a bunch of my friends who, just like me, were cosplaying as their favorite characters. I was dressed up as the popular virtual pop star Hatsune Miku, and my other friends were dressed up as Megurine Luka and Kagami Rin and Kagami Len. For context, we're all female, and at the time we were all in our early 20s. Also for this story, I'll refer to my friends as the characters they were dressed up as, because why not? Anyway, the creepy experience doesn't take place at the anime convention. Everybody there was super chill and we made plenty of new friends, but instead it takes place somewhere else. After the second day of the convention, I wanted to do a little bit of exploring the city before I would be returning back home. I myself had moved to NorCal the previous year to study Parks and Recreation at San Jose State University, and as this was the first time in almost a year that I had been back down here, I wanted to see the sights. So my friends and I decided to go to nearby Santa Monica and Venice Beach to go swimming and check out all the artsy stuff. That was fine and all, and at about 5 p.m., we decided to go grab some pizza. After that, we stopped at an arcade which also had a bowling alley where we proceeded to spend the next couple of hours playing. This would be the location of my very, well, let's just say, unpleasant evening. So we were playing Dance Dance Revolution, and I noticed that we were starting to get quite the crowd. A huge mix, kids, teenagers, and some adults. After we had completed one of the songs, the crowd broke out into a huge cheer as we thanked them, and I stepped down to let one of my other friends play. At this moment, a scrawny middle-aged man wearing all black approached me and said that he really loved the Hatsune Miku shirt I was wearing. While we weren't cosplaying there at the arcade, we did each wear our own shirts that had the character we had been cosplaying as before. I said thank you to the man with a smile before he starts asking me some questions. One of them was asking me if my friends and I were of Japanese descent, to which I told him we were, and this suddenly brings this strange smile to his face. I've always wanted to meet a cute Japanese girl, but I've never gotten the chance to do so. I said thank you in a very awkward and shy manner before he then follows up by asking me if I would like to join him for dinner. I told him I had already ate with my friends and I thanked him anyway, but then he asks me if I could take a picture with him. Before I get a chance to say anything, he pulls out his phone and then embraces me tightly as he tries to get a picture. I pretty much made an excuse on the spot saying I wasn't ready, and I put my hand up over my face. I then try to pull away from him, which was a bit tough because he was holding on to me pretty firmly. But when I do, my friend with the Megurine Luka shirt comes running up to us. Some of the people who were watching my friends play see this awkward exchange, which causes the man to put his phone away and then walk in the other direction. Naturally, I was pretty freaked out by it. It's not every day some random man just grabs you and embraces you and then tries to take a picture with you. So we notified a nearby security guard, but it seemed the creep was long gone. At least, so it seemed. At this point, my friends asked me if I wanted to go back to the hotel room, but I tell them I'm fine since I didn't want to leave and give this guy the gratification that he'd creep me out. Silly thinking, I know. Fast forward about 30 minutes later, my paranoia is really getting to me, and I keep getting this strange feeling like I'm being watched. My friends notice this and finally I cave in and tell them, okay, well let's get going. So we pick out some prizes with the tickets we had won. I got myself a little Yoshi plush in case you're wondering, and we now exit to make our way to the parking lot. Unfortunately, it seems somebody was waiting for us. The creeper from inside the arcade was just seemingly sitting there at a bench. Well, without question, when he spots us, he comes walking over, and then of all things, offers to give us crack for free. He said it was his treat. Well, that escalated really quickly. We tell him we're not interested, as he proceeds by stating it would make us feel better, to which we again say no thank you. This makes him angry, and now he states that he would take his harem of Japanese girls, that being us, by force, and back to his place, and that if we didn't follow his directions, we would be in a world of hurt. Well, it's 4 against 1, not sure how that was going to happen. We called him out on his BS and then start to briskly walk back to the car. He follows us there, and once we're inside, he starts to bang on the window saying how dare us disrespect him and that he would kill us, yada yada yada. I wish my friend would have run over his foot, but she didn't, as somebody who happened to have been walking back to their car sees the man, and we could hear him asking him what he was doing. Before the creep leaves, we can hear him say, being muffled through the closed windows, "You haven't seen the last of me." He then bolts it in the other direction, disappearing across the street and into an alleyway. Talk about unexpected and terrifying. In case you were curious, we did notify the LAPD, but nothing ever came up of that creep, as far as I can tell. As I look back, I'm almost certain he had to have been on some sort of drugs. I don't think any normal person would act that way. As far as I know, he didn't get the chance to take the photo, as I'd moved and said no before he did. I just kinda wonder, however, had he had taken any photos when we weren't looking? That idea is quite creepy, but I don't let it get to me. Sure, this might not be the scariest story in the world to some, but I would hope you would take a moment to put yourself in my shoes. I wouldn't want you to have to go through something like this, because it's not fun. This happened in the early 90s when all the kids my age used to go and play at the arcades. We would play games like Donkey Kong, Street Fighter, and Pac-Man, just to name a few. Honestly, being a gamer in the 90s was really awesome. We were starting to get some really cool home consoles, but nothing beats saving up your money and going to the arcade after school. Since I grew up in a small town in Missouri, I didn't really worry too much about creeps or scary situations. Everyone, for the most part, looked after each other in this town, and you never heard about anything bad happening. Well, I remember one afternoon in particular. I was with my friend Jaden, and we were at an arcade called Level 1. We loved going here because there was a pizzeria we would eat at before playing. Also, this was during a time when our parents wouldn't mind us being out, so long as we got home by a certain time. Anyway, Jaden and I ordered our usual pepperoni pizza and immediately went to go play some driving games. We were there for a total of about 2 hours until we noticed it was starting to get dark outside. Jaden insisted we stayed a little bit longer, so we went to go play the Simpsons game before finally leaving. We head over and there's a man playing it. He was wearing workout clothing and he had a bandana on his head. Anyway, we were kinda bummed out, but he says, "Oh, I'm done playing. You kids can take over. By the way, I don't really need these tickets anymore since I'm moving out of town tomorrow. It's your kids' lucky day. Get whatever you want." The man had a suitcase which must have contained over 10,000 tickets. Us being the naive kids we were, gladly accepted the gift, and we proceeded to put our remaining tokens into the game. We play, but the man stands behind us just watching. We didn't mind him as he seemed friendly, albeit a bit off. After 20 minutes, we start heading toward the exit, but the man stops us. "Wait, I just remembered. I have some extra tickets in the back of my van. Can you two help me grab them? I really don't need them after all. Come on, let's go to the back way. There's an exit at the back of the arcade." We begin to follow him, but we start realizing something is wrong here. My friend and I look at each other, realizing we were following a stranger with unknown intentions. Before exiting the building, we ended up telling him we had to go. This angered him, and he demanded we go with him no matter what. He grabs my arm and starts pulling me, while my friend is yelling at him to stop. This grabs the attention of a security guard, who then yells at this man to let go. He does, and he runs off into the back, which has the parking lot. The security guard then gives chase, but by the time he catches up, the stranger hops into his van and drives away, never to be seen again. We did figure that he was trying to make off with one of us, which was why he acted so kindly, hoping we would trust him. I'm now in my mid-30s and married with 2 kids. I always tell them to be very careful with who they talk to, no matter how nice they might seem. You just never know what they truly have planned. For reference, I'm female, and I was 19 years of age. This happened about 5 years ago when my friends and I decided to take our friend Alexis out to Dave & Buster's for her 18th birthday. I know for many it's not the most ideal location to spend such a special day, but it was the easiest option, as it was our favorite location. After all, when you live in a pretty boring town where the only fun thing to do is go to the mall and people watch, you appreciate the little things like arcades and pizza. And appreciate we did, as we spent most of the evening playing games and sharing laughs. I personally have always been a huge fan of Jurassic Park, and so I spent most of my tokens and time playing at the Jurassic Park video game. At some point in the middle of my dino adventure, I see a figure in my peripheral vision as they take a seat next to me. As I was so focused on the gameplay, I assumed it was one of my girlfriends watching in shock and awe. However, since the person hadn't acknowledged themselves, I grew weary, and I focused my attention to the visitor. Instead of seeing a familiar face, I see one of a complete stranger. It's this older man in his late 40s, with dreadlock hair, sunglasses, a Hawaiian t-shirt, and jeans. "I'm sorry, sir, did you want to play? Here, I was just about to finish anyway," I tell him, realizing he might have been waiting for a long time. "No, that's fine. I always enjoy watching people play games. I'm a huge fan. Rightfully so, there's something about having a stranger sit next to you that's a bit unsettling. Not so much because I'm paranoid, but for the fact he started to compliment me. Okay, now I know that in itself isn't the worst thing in the world, but he started getting pretty specific. Eventually, he demanded I go out with him. Here's what he more or less said from my best memory. "Hey, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?" 18, huh? Are you here by yourself? Oh, okay, well maybe you'd love to go home with me. After all, what's a beauty like yourself doing at an arcade? I've got a whole bunch of arcade machines back in my place. Maybe you want to go play them with me. You don't have to worry about spending your tokens here. I'm pretty sure his definition of playing together wasn't sitting down and playing video games in front of a television screen. Either way, I had enough of him, so I get up and quickly spot one of my friends. I would have thought that could have been the end, just a random encounter with a creepy man trying to get lucky with whoever he could find. Remember, I live in a pretty boring town, so there's not much for these dudes to do. Well, he for whatever reason decided to follow me, and then tell my group of friends he knew the owner, and could get us unlimited tokens if we wished. As if. Was he really trying to buy my love with tokens? Wasn't going to happen. Even my girlfriends were becoming creeped out and weary by the guy. That's why we continued to ignore him, all the while he's doing all he could to get us to talk to him. One of my friends, Jasmine, basically told this dude off by saying something along the lines of, "Look, dude, nobody wants to go back to your place, and no one surely wants to accept any of your advances. Now stop following us around, or we're going to grab security." Literally everybody in Dave & Buster's focused their attention to our group, and this guy suddenly froze. He made that facial expression and hand gesture of, "Nothing to see here, folks. Just some friends having an argument, that's all." He then walks out of the Dave & Buster's. Talk about strange. That should have been the end of my story, but unfortunately it's not. An hour later, we had already put the creep behind us and we had finally decided to wrap everything up. My friends were going to go back to Alexis's house to party a little longer, but I had to go home to check up on my dogs, as my parents were out of town. So I excused myself and I began making my way over to the parking lot. I was parked about a minute walk from the Dave & Buster's, and next to the Target that's on the other side of this large parking lot district. Well, things ended up getting worse when I noticed the sound of a vehicle approaching me. Now, I can understand people wanting to park in your spot but I was all the way in the back. Plus, there were many other available spots, so why would you want to follow me? I got my answer not too long after, when the vehicle, which turned out to be a van, pulls up beside me, and moments later the side door opens, and someone reaches toward me. They managed to just grab a bit of my arm, but I was able to pull away at the last second. I'm not even joking, but when I looked into the van, I saw a sight that scared me so bad, it still gives me chills when I write this out. Remember the guy from Dave & Buster's? Mr. Dreadlock Dude? Here he was, trying to pull me into this van with what looked to be like 2 other men. I booked it using the vehicles in the parking lot as a sort of barrier to keep me as far away from the men as possible. I was able to locate a family of 4 and I told them about what had just taken place. They were pretty shocked by my sudden revelation as they had actually seen the van approaching me but had no idea of the circumstances. Anyway, I ended up filing a police report with a description of the vehicle as well as the men I encountered that evening. Eventually, the 3 were actually caught and arrested, thus removing 3 bad guys from the street. Next time, I think I'll stick to being around my friends. Also, since that event, I carry a taser and pepper spray. Back during my college years in the 80s, I used to work for a video rental store that was tied in with a small arcade. There were many evenings in which I had to close up alone, which wasn't a problem since the owner let me stay after hours to play video games. I'd say that made it all the worthwhile, since I was and still am quite a night owl. There were a lot of friendly customers that I actually became really close friends with. Most of them would come visit me, and during my breaks we would have competitions playing Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, and all the other games on display. Now, that didn't mean that we didn't get some pretty interesting customers. There's one in particular I want to go ahead and tell you all about. It sort of started by chance. I was at the grocery store with my boyfriend at the time, and this man walked up to me and told my boyfriend that he was pretty lucky to have somebody like me. He introduced himself as Josh or something along those lines, and he was, from my best recollection, in his 40s, and I remember him being slightly overweight, a bit shorter than me. I was 5'7" and he was maybe 5'5". He had glasses and greasy long black hair. Anyway, a couple of days later, I'm working a night shift at the rental store, and the man from the grocery store walked in. He had this face of, cool and just going to rent a movie, which quickly changed to, oh my gosh, if it isn't the girl from the grocery store. Literally, it's like all his attention was now laser focused on me as he makes his way over to my counter. He tells me it was really nice to meet me the other day and goes on about how he's never seen me here before. I told him I had just started working here a few months ago, but was only here on the weekends since it conflicted with my college schedule. We talk for another 15 to 20 seconds as I respond with short answers, until I told him I needed to get back to work. Here's when the first indication of something being serious and wrong occurs. I get interrupted by a customer who is with his 2 kids that are looking to rent some movies. I remember this Josh guy telling me that the customer looking to rent the movie could wait, as he was being rude and interrupting the conversation we were having. I ignored Josh as I help out the customer. Once I'm done, he tells me it was really rude to just ignore him, but I have to remind him I'm on the clock. He leaves and the rest of the shift goes by uneventfully. Next day, I'm working in the morning and guess who shows up? It's Josh, and he's got a bouquet of roses. I'm really sorry about yesterday. You're just really beautiful, and I couldn't help myself. I brought you some roses to make it up to you. It was pretty awkward, and one look at my coworker Colton pretty much said it all. Even Colton told the man this wasn't the time and place, and Josh pretty much cursed him out. Josh insisted I take the flowers, but I told him I wasn't feeling comfortable, reminding him that I had a boyfriend. Josh grows furious as he proceeds to throw the roses at my coworker Colton's face. He then knocks over some of the popcorn and candy displays before storming out of the video rental store. Colton looked at me and jokingly said I had a new secret admirer, but then admitted it was pretty creepy to have some guy 20 years older than me bringing me flowers. Well, yeah, I was the one having to deal with him, not him. Anyway, I wish I could say that was the last time I would see Josh, but it's not. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, Josh would come into the store. However, instead of talking to me, he would just walk around for hours, pretending to be looking at renting movies. He didn't even play at any of the arcade machines either. He would just sit at one of the benches, and I swear he was staring at me. I finally brought it up with my manager, and I told him I wasn't feeling comfortable working under those circumstances. He told me he would take care of it, and one day he walked up to Josh, and he told him he can't be loitering since other customers might want to use the benches. Josh then disappeared for about 3 months, and I finally thought the talk my manager had with him would be enough. That was until one evening I was closing with Colton. We'd already escorted all the customers out of the building, and Colton had been in the back room using the restroom. I was in the process of locking the doors, but before I could make it to the front, I saw someone staring at me from one of the windows. I couldn't believe it, but standing out in the rain was Josh, and worst of all, I could see he's holding a small pocket knife. I freaked out as I attempt locking the door, but he manages to place his hands on the door handle literally 2 seconds before I could put the key into the keyhole. I booked it toward the back room just as Colton is walking out. "Colton, get inside! Call the police, quick!" I shout, full of panic and fear, heart beating louder than my footsteps and sweat dropping down my brow. We both make it into the back room, and we slam the door, with the lock mechanism locking into place and indicating that we were safe. Josh begins to pound on the door while I'm just standing there trying to hold back tears. Colton tells Josh we were calling the police, but I don't think he cared. He kept kicking and kicking at the door, demanding I come out and talk to him, and that nothing would happen to me if I listened. Obviously, that wasn't happening. Thankfully, the police get there just as Josh is leaving, and they manage to arrest him with no further altercation. I ended up filing a restraining order shortly after the incident, and I'm happy to report ever since that legal process was completed, I've never seen Josh again. Hey there everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Creepy Fox podcast. Make sure that if you're new around here, click that subscribe button and the bell beside it. That way you'll be notified of any and all future narration videos coming here to the Creepy Fox. Make sure to also leave a like and a comment telling me what you all thought. Also, consider picking up some merchandise, which you can find right below the video player. I got designs based off the Creepy Fox, as well as my animated series Aria of Emerald Hearts. Speaking of below the video, there you'll find my St. Jude's charity which I'm currently running. I've decided to go ahead and extend it, thanks to suggestions from listeners. The plan is to run up to 1,000, then I'll send it over to St. Jude and starting again from the start. This way we can try to send them something from all of us every once in a while and make sure it's more consistent. So yeah, let me go ahead and give a shout out to all the amazing channel members who support me. Thank you to Robbie, Bo, Haiti, Spunky the Nutcase, Rice and Beans, Scott, Sean, Corey, Linz, Maribel, and Blaze Goddess. Thank you very much for your continued support. Thank you of course to all the regular viewers who watch and leave likes, comments, and share the channel with their friends and family. Anyway friends, that's going to go ahead and do it for today. I'll catch you all next time. Take care, and have yourself an amazing day.